It's where the Rockies soar over the Great Plains, a land with more high peaks than any other state, but also towering mountains of sand and a river of red rocks that lures music lovers with its perfect sound. In Colorado, athletes push their bodies to the limits in their quest for gold, and others climb to honor heroes who died. Here, engineers span some of America's deepest canyons, and wild herds thrive. From its alpine valleys to the tops of its deadly bells. It was here where a young poet was inspired to write one of America's most patriotic songs. Ariel, Colorado tells the story of how a tiny mining town became one of the greatest cities in the West, with a mile-high team that's made the Rocky Mountain State proud. From its ski slopes to its skies, this is where America comes together along the Continental Divide. This is Colorado. In 1858, a miner in Georgia named William Green Russell heard an intriguing rumor through his Cherokee wife. Members of her tribe had found gold in a remote creek in Colorado. Russell and 8 companions decided to set out and see if it was true. Although many joined their party along the way, most gave up and returned home. But Russell stuck it out. And in July 1858, he too struck gold. Word of Russell's find spread across the country, and soon thousands of hopeful prospectors flooded into Colorado. Most of them were headed to an area that geologists now call the Colorado Mineral Belt. Deep below the peaks of the Rocky Mountains lies a rich belt of ore-bearing rock, full of gold and silver. Formed by fiery volcanic forces, the belt stretches across central Colorado from the northeast down to the southwest. In those early days, getting the ore out meant digging it out by hand and living in crowded mining camps with hundreds of other rowdy prospectors. That's what life was once like here in the former mining town of Telluride, which was founded in 1878 at the base of this narrow box canyon. These days, Telluride is better known for the homes of celebrities like Tom Cruise and Ralph Lauren. But once, this tiny town bustled with eager miners, entrepreneurs, and Colorado's most wanted. In 1889, Butch Cassidy rode into town, walked into the local San Miguel Valley Bank, and pulled off his first bank robbery, walking out with $24,580 in cash, which would be worth more than $500,000 today. When it came time to make the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, director George Roy Hill chose a location nearby to shoot one of the film's most memorable scenes. Locomotives have been pulling cars through this canyon south of Telluride since 1882. Today, the Durango and Silverton Railway carries history buffs and tourists. But in Butch Cassidy's time, it hauled gold and silver ore out of Colorado's mineral belt. In the 1969 film, Paul Newman and Robert Redford stop the train and try to blow up its safe, but blow up the entire mail car by mistake. The money they were after rained down on the tracks, just as it did for many of Colorado's small mining towns, as they rode to prosperity on the rails. Trains finally arrived in Telluride in 1890. And as ore from the town rolled out, wealth rolled in. A building boom gave the town a distinctive 19th century Main Street that's now the venue for its famous annual film festival. These days, there's no train to Telluride, just one road, and this single high-altitude airstrip. The heyday of Colorado's gold rush is long gone. Many of its old mining towns were abandoned when the ore ran out. But one has been reborn as America's ski capital, Aspen. It was named for the native trees that blanket the surrounding mountains. In the late 19th century, Aspen had the most productive silver mines in America. At the time, the U.S. government was scooping up all the silver it could get its hands on for its national reserves. When that buying spree ended, Aspen's mines closed, almost overnight. But then, an entrepreneur turned the town's fortunes around and transformed this little mining town into a ski resort. Aspen is one of many ski resorts scattered across the Rockies, including Telluride, Breckenridge, Vail, Copper Mountain, Arapahoe Basin, and Steamboat Springs. But Aspen was the first to make Colorado America's ski capital. Four major ski slopes blanket the peaks around Aspen. Even in the off-season, paragliders use these slopes to launch themselves into the skies and soar over the Colorado Rockies and some of the most expensive homes in the world. Aspen's silver boom has been replaced by one in real estate, driven in part by the town's popularity with celebrities. Just outside of town, at the bottom of this narrow valley, is the 160-acre estate of actor Kevin Costner. He's one of dozens of celebrities who have called Aspen home over the years. Others include Hunter S. Thompson, Goldie Hawn, and Jack Nicholson. But many who pass through Aspen aren't here to rub shoulders with Hollywood stars or hit the slopes. They come to try to climb some of the most dangerous peaks in the United States. Tourists know these two distinctive bell-shaped peaks as the Maroon Bells. But climbers know they can also be deadly. They are some of the most photographed mountains in the world. There are hundreds of high peaks in the Rockies, but most who set eyes on the Bells never forget them. But the beauty of these peaks can mask their danger. Climbers have only to take one step on these steep slopes to discover why. Trails can give way suddenly and send a climber tumbling down the mountain's jagged flanks. On the way up, a sign posted by the U.S. Forest Service warns of the mountain's danger. The beautiful Maroon Bells are unbelievably deceptive, it says. The rock is loose and unstable. It kills without warning. The snowfields are treacherous. The gullies, death traps. Only rarely have these mountains given a second chance. In 1965, 8 people died on the Maroon Bells in 5 separate climbing accidents. Tragedies that gave the mountains their nickname, the Deadly Bells. But this part of Colorado hasn't just claimed the lives of climbers. It's also been holding on to fascinating evidence of the Ice Age creatures that once prowled the Colorado Rockies. On October 14, 2010, just outside of Aspen, in the village of Snowmass, a bulldozer operator building the new Ziegler Reservoir made a remarkable discovery: the fossilized bones of a mastodon. Scientists rushed in to see what other prehistoric treasures might be buried here. Over 70 days, they sifted through 7,000 tons of dirt and unearthed 4,500 fossils from more than 40 different species: a Columbian mammoth, muskrats, sloths, horses, camels, and birds, making it one of the greatest scientific discoveries in Colorado history. Tens of thousands of years ago, this future reservoir was the site of a prehistoric lake. The animals would have come here to drink, but why these creatures all died together remains a mystery. One theory is that an earthquake suddenly turned the lake bed to quicksand, which swallowed the beasts whole, though no one knows for sure. Today, these motor scrapers are the only giant creatures on this ancient lake. And the bones from Ziegler Reservoir are being studied by scientists at Denver's Natural History Museum to better understand the Ice Age history of the Rocky Mountains. With so many mountains in the Colorado Rockies, it's not surprising to find evidence of unique discoveries behind many of them. What lies near the source of Colorado's tiny Crystal River is no exception. This is the site of one of the most unique finds in America, a vast buried fortune of some of the purest marble in the world. Mining engineer George Ewell first came across this bed of stone in the 1870s. Later, the Rockefellers invested millions to get the marble out. What makes Ewell marble so special is that it's completely white, without any of the streaks found in most marbles. That's why it was selected to build the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery. Unlike most marble quarries, this one lies entirely underground. Piled outside are blocks with flaws that will be sold as scrap. In 2004, Ewell marble became Colorado's official state stone. These days, most of it ends up overseas, in Italy and China. But the first major project to be built with this marble was much closer to home: the interior of the Colorado State House. When Colorado became a state in 1876, Denver was chosen as the capital, securing its place as the Rocky Mountain State's premier city. But disputes over the design of its new state house delayed construction for decades. It wasn't until 1908, more than 30 years later, that the Capitol's giant dome was finished with a coat of gold leaf. A monument to Colorado's early miners and those who first settled this city. Soon after gold was discovered at the base of the Rockies, entrepreneurs opened a saloon nearby. That tavern was the first permanent building in a little mining town called Denver. Over the next 30 years, Denver mushroomed as it catered to prospectors on their way to and from the mines. By 1890, Denver had a population of 107,000 and was the second largest city in the West after San Francisco. Its first bank, post office, and bookstore were located here in Larimer Square. That's now an upscale shopping area. High above, Denver bristles with skyscrapers and a daring new building that was designed to launch the city into the future. The Denver Art Museum was founded in the 1890s, but its older building wasn't quite in keeping with its growing modern art collection. So, in 2000, it commissioned internationally renowned architect Daniel Libeskind to design new galleries that would secure the museum's relevance far into the future. Libeskind based his design on the thrusting extreme angles of the Rockies and clad the new museum in 9,000 titanium panels. Outside stands the Big Sweep, a 35-foot-high sculpture of a broom and dustpan by artists Klaus Oldenburg and Kosha van Bruggen. The influence of the Rockies on Denver's modern architecture isn't limited to this museum. Outside of town, a series of peaks appears on the horizon. Architect Curtis W. Fentress came up with this mountain-inspired design for the new Jefferson Terminal at Denver International Airport. Teflon-coated fiberglass, no thicker than a credit card, covers this now iconic 1.5 million square foot terminal. Inside, its walls are lined with the state's own Yule marble. Colorado's modernist architecture caught the eye of filmmaker Woody Allen in 1973 when he was looking for a futuristic backdrop for his new science fiction parody, Sleeper. He found it here on Genesee Mountain, just outside of Denver. Perched in the trees, this futuristic-looking house was designed by architect Charles Deaton in the 60s. People aren't angular, Deaton explained, so why should they live in rectangles? It was in this house that Woody Allen's character Miles Monroe wakes up after being cryogenically frozen for 200 years and finds himself worlds away from his former life in 20th century Manhattan. Sleeper was an instant hit and has made this Colorado house famous. But it's not architecture or the movies that Denver is ultimately most famous for. That honor goes to its hometown team here at Mile High. There's a good reason why Denver's Mile High Stadium has been sold out for almost every football game since the 1970s. Its home team, the Denver Broncos, is one of the most successful in the NFL. They've won 6 AFC championships and 2 back-to-back Super Bowls. And they're known to play best on their home turf, which is one reason it takes such a beating. It's repainted before every game in Broncos blue, orange, and white. While Mile High is getting prepped, so too is the team. Just outside of Denver in Englewood is the Broncos Conditioning Center. This is where the team trains between games. Legendary Broncos quarterback John Elway practiced here until 1999, when he brought his team to victory one last time at Super Bowl 33. The team hasn't brought home a trophy since, but today, players work hard to continue Elway's winning legacy. In the 1990s, Denver and its suburbs like Englewood made up one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in America. Rising incomes, quality of life, and home ownership made Denver Metro the envy of the nation, which made what happened here on April 20th, 1999, in the suburb of Columbine, that much more shocking. On that morning, 2 students here at Columbine High School unleashed a wave of terror. When their homemade bombs failed to detonate, the two heavily armed 12th grade boys gunned down 13 people before taking their own lives. The events of that day led to a national search for answers that would explain the violence. But even after more than a decade, many still wonder how Columbine could have happened. On this fall Saturday, Columbine looks much like any other Colorado high school. Cheerleaders and the band prepare for an upcoming game. But the events of April 20th, 1999 have not been forgotten. The original library, where most of the violence took place, has been demolished and replaced by the new Hope Columbine Memorial Library, built to honor those who died. Columbine High School lies in what's called the Front Range, where Colorado's Rocky Mountains meet the Great Plains. To the east, farmland stretches 150 miles to the state's borders with Nebraska and Kansas. This is Colorado's breadbasket. Many think of Colorado as the Rocky Mountain state, but nearly 50% of it is actually farmland. The state's 36,000 farms produce cash receipts in the billions, putting Colorado in the top 10 in the nation for the production of alfalfa hay, potatoes, and wool. But what's interesting in Colorado is seeing what happens where the mountains and the plains meet. Especially here in the San Luis Valley. This valley lies in the southern half of the state, bordered by the Sangre de Cristo Mountains to the east. With an average elevation of 7,500 feet, it's the highest alpine valley in North America. Over millennia, mountain streams have poured sediment into the San Luis Valley. Winds from the southwest push it towards the Sangre de Cristo Range. But when storm winds from the mountains push back, that sediment gets trapped in the middle and piles into these towering dunes that cover nearly 150,000 acres. 750 feet high in places, these are the tallest sand dunes in America. An early explorer described the appearance of these waves of sand as exactly that of the sea in a storm. Great Sand Dunes National Park is one of the many surprising sights that appear where Colorado's plains and mountains converge. But there are surprising sounds here too. Like those that reverberate off the walls of Red Rocks Amphitheater in the foothills of the Rockies outside of Denver, drawing thousands to one of the most famous open-air arenas in the world, thanks in part to the band U2. Bono used the stunning setting of Red Rocks as a backdrop for U2's iconic video for the song Sunday Bloody Sunday. Tonight, fans are gathering to hear Snoop Dogg and Sound Tribe's Sector 9. What makes Red Rocks a unique performance venue is its stunning natural acoustics. Concert halls can spend millions perfecting their sound, but the steep angle of the arena and the walls created by these rock formations provide their own perfect acoustics, naturally. Thanks to a stroke of geologic luck that was set into motion nearly 300 million years ago. Red Rocks lies along a river of sandstone peaks that continues south down the Front Range. First thrust up by geologic forces, these rock formations were then softened by millions of years of erosion. They passed through subdivisions, golf courses, and a garden of the gods. When two surveyors mapped this collection of sandstone pinnacles back in 1859, one of them thought it would be the perfect spot for a beer garden. but the other considered it a place worthy of the divine. And so he named it the Garden of the Gods. And he wasn't the last one to find God on the Front Range. Over the last 20 years, nearby Colorado Springs has been transformed into a national hub of Christian fundamentalist worship. Here, megachurches, not mountains, rise from the plains. Over 100 religious organizations call the area home, leading some to brand Colorado Springs the Mecca of conservative Christianity. One of the city's megachurches was recently rocked by scandal. It was here at the New Life Church that Pastor Ted Haggard preached vehemently against homosexuality to his 14,000-member congregation. But in 2006, Haggard admitted to having a relationship with a male escort, from whom he'd also bought the drug crystal meth. Father Ted resigned from New Life Church and ended up selling insurance. Rising above Colorado Springs, in the foothills of the Rockies, one spiritual center stands apart. The Cadet Chapel at the U.S. Air Force Academy. It's the most visited man-made site in Colorado. Buddhist, Jewish, and Christian services are held here, all under one extraordinary roof. The chapel is the centerpiece of a sleek modernist campus designed at the height of the jet age by architect Walter Netsch. At any given time, up to 4,000 cadets train here to be the Air Force's next generation of leaders and find inspiration in the 17 soaring spires that invoke jets taking flight. Many of the Air Force Academy's graduates land here at nearby Peterson Air Force Base. They might even get a chance to fly this V-22 Osprey taking off from the base. This controversial new aircraft lifts off like a helicopter but can fly like a plane. Peterson is home to the headquarters of the United States Air Force Space Command, which oversees satellite and cyber operations for the U.S. military. But once, many of the top secret operations now underway at Peterson were buried deep inside a nearby mountain, built to withstand the impact of nuclear attack. A single rail car winds its way up Colorado's Pikes Peak, high above Colorado Springs. A regular train would slide right down these tracks, but this Swiss-made car uses a cogwheel to grab hold of teeth on the rails and ratchet itself up. By the time it reaches the top of the mountain, it's the highest railroad of its kind in the world. But it wasn't always so easy to get to the top of Pikes Peak. In 1893, a poet named Catherine Lee Bates reached the summit on a mule. We hired a prairie wagon, she recalled, but near the top, we had to leave the wagon and go the rest of the way on mules. I was very tired, but when I saw the view, I felt great joy. All the wonder of America seemed displayed there, with the sea-like expanse. Inspired, Bates wrote a few verses, which later became the lyrics to America the Beautiful. Climb high in the Colorado Rockies, and it's not hard to see why Bates was so awestruck by the view. Down below, herds of wild elk cross the mountains in their search for food. There are more of these animals in Colorado than in any other state. Local hunters call the densely tree-covered valleys where they graze dark pine, a perfect description of this landscape when seen from the air. Nearby, a lone mountain goat searches for its flock. This species is only found in the western half of North America and ranges all the way up to Alaska. But no matter how high you go in Colorado, there's one place you'll never be able to see from up here. A place that the U.S. government has worked hard to keep hidden for more than half a century. Just a few miles from Pikes Peak is what looks like a mine shaft, but actually, it's the entrance to one of America's most legendary military command centers. When the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, was first formed in 1958, it needed a safe home from which it could watch the skies for Soviet missiles and take a direct hit in the event of nuclear war. So military engineers created a hidden fortress carved 2,000 feet into the granite core of Colorado's Cheyenne Mountain. Inside, 1,800 people once worked in a series of bunkers, each mounted on springs to absorb the shock of a potential nuclear blast. They monitored the skies around the globe for long-range missiles and played elaborate computerized war games that prepared them for Armageddon. But a nuclear attack never came. And in 2006, almost 50 years after building it, the U.S. government pulled most of NORAD out of the mountain. The threats to U.S. national security have since evolved. A bunker deep inside the Rockies isn't necessarily the best defense against today's cyber attacks, terrorists, and dirty bombs. But there is one place in Colorado that's been designed to deal with exactly these kinds of threats. Or at least the people who perpetrate them. Just 30 miles south of Cheyenne Mountain lies ADX Florence, the federal government's supermax prison. Opened in 1994, this is the most secure prison in the world. And the reason why is that it holds 500 of the world's most dangerous criminals. Supermax has been designed to make sure no prisoner will ever escape, and none have. At least not yet. Inmates here spend up to 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, conditions one prisoner called a living tomb, and a former warden described as a clean version of hell. Inside this facility is Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, FBI turncoat Robert Hansen, and Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. A shocking attack that killed 6, injured 1,000 more, and foreshadowed one of America's greatest tragedies. A tragedy that's being remembered today, nearby, high in the Colorado Rockies. An abandoned railroad line cuts a steep path up Colorado's Mount Manitou. A group of determined firefighters is finally reaching the top. Fully loaded with oxygen tanks, they've climbed more than 2,000 feet in the heat of the blazing Colorado sun. But they're not here to put out a fire or rescue an injured hiker. They've come to honor their colleagues who died climbing the stairs of the World Trade Center exactly 10 years earlier on 9/11/2001. Since there are no skyscrapers in this part of Colorado, these firefighters have decided to honor this day by climbing the Manitou Incline instead. Old railway ties have created this mile-long stairway. It's not only a popular place for hikers to test their endurance, but also a favorite training ground for America's top athletes. For members of the U.S. wrestling, speed skating, and volleyball teams, this killer climb has become a rite of passage. but the bulk of their conditioning happens here, just down the hill at the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. This facility can house more than 500 top athletes and coaches at any given time. Gold medalists, swimmer Michael Phelps and skater Apollo Ono have both trained here. The facility lies 6,000 feet above sea level. Athletic activity is harder on the body in Colorado than it is at lower elevations. With less oxygen up here, the human body goes into overdrive. Muscles work more efficiently and lung capacity expands. It's the perfect place for athletes to push themselves to their limits. And it's what makes Denver the perfect place to hit a baseball. At Coors Field in Denver, workers are busy prepping for another home game of the Colorado Rockies. Since opening in 1995, Coors Field has earned a reputation as a hitter's park. Thanks to Denver's thin mountain air, a home run hit here in the mile-high city can travel 9% farther than a home run hit at sea level at Yankee Stadium. But this advantage hasn't actually paid off yet for the Colorado Rockies. In nearly 20 years of play, the team has never won a World Series. Coors bought the naming rights for this stadium in 1995. It seemed like a perfect match for the beer that brands itself as having a mile-high taste. But it wasn't the altitude that first drew German brewmaster Adolf Coors here in 1873. It was the water. Here on the banks of Clear Creek, at the foot of the Rockies west of Denver, Coors found the perfect spot for a brewery. First selling his beer to thirsty miners, his business grew. The tiny operation he started is now the largest single-site brewery in the world. Every bottle and can of Coors is made right here, with the fresh snowmelt of the Rockies. There's a reason this is some of the best water in America. Follow Golden's Clear Creek into the mountains and keep climbing until you reach the top, and you'll find out why. The Continental Divide. The Continental Divide crosses the United States from the northwest corner of Montana to the southwest corner of New Mexico. In Colorado, it follows a series of peaks through the Rockies. The tallest of these is also the tallest in the state, Mount Elbert. This hiker, attempting the summit of Mount Elbert's 14,433-foot peak, is walking the ridge that literally splits America in two. Any rain or melting snow to his left flows west towards the Pacific, supplying water to thirsty populations in the southwest. The water that falls to the right of this ridge flows east towards the Atlantic and helps nourish communities and farms from Colorado's plains all the way to the Mississippi River. A quarter of all water in the U.S. originates here in the Rocky Mountains, which is why protecting this watershed is so important. The problem is that the mountains along the divide also hold some of the richest mineral deposits in America. The challenge is to get those minerals out without polluting the drinking water of millions. "25 miles north of Mount Elbert, the Climax Mine straddles the Continental Divide. It's the largest producer of molybdenum in the world. Moly, as it's known for short, is a key mineral used in the production of steel. To mine it, this company cuts away the earth under the ore, and then, as the rock above falls and breaks, gathers it for processing. Inside this giant dome, chemicals are used to separate the valuable molybdenite from surrounding rock. The chemical waste is then sent to ponds, which cover several square miles. But underneath these ponds, a constant stream of groundwater flows directly to Denver's water system. In order to keep this water source pure, these tailings ponds have to be carefully designed and managed so that mining chemicals don't leach into the groundwater below and pollute the watershed of the Continental Divide. On the eve of Halloween, 1974, author Stephen King and his wife checked in at this hotel in the Colorado Rockies. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park already had a reputation as a very creepy hotel. For years, visitors had reported seeing ghosts and spirits in their rooms, and the hotel piano playing itself. All perfect material for a master of the macabre. Inspired by the hotel and its stories, Stephen King wrote his now famous terrifying tale, The Shining. For the novel, King turned the Stanley into a fictional hotel named The Overlook. He even included his own room number. One of the hotel's workers had warned little boy Danny, "A bad thing happened. That was in room 217. And I want you to promise me you won't go in there, Danny. Not all winter. Steer right clear." Today's guests keep an eye out for King's characters, spooky twins and dead ladies in bathtubs. The ghost of F.O. Stanley, the hotel's former owner, is also said to walk the halls. Had Stephen King visited here back in the 19th century, he might have felt right at home in this valley. That's because his background is Scots-Irish. Beginning in the 1870s, a wave of immigrants from the British Isles settled this corner of the Rockies. One of them was the Earl of Dunraven, an Irish nobleman with a passion for sport hunting, who bought much of the valley to create a game reserve. Descendants of those settlers still celebrate their heritage and their love of sport right here in town at the annual Longs Peak Scottish and Irish Highland Festival, the largest Celtic event in the West. For 4 days, men and women here compete in a wide variety of games. Bagpipe bands come from across the country to try to impress a panel of judges for top prize. The competition here is fierce. This game, called the sheaf toss, has been played since the Middle Ages. Using a pitchfork, each competitor has to hurl a 24-pound burlap sack over a bar, which moves higher and higher as the game goes on. The winner this year cleared 34 feet. The Longs Peak Festival is named after a nearby mountain that lies in the heart of one of America's great national parks. Rising more than 14,200 feet, the summit of Longs Peak is often obscured by the clouds. More than 50 people have died trying to climb it since the first ascent in 1868. Frequent lightning strikes at the top kill climbers, and snow blankets the peak most of the year. When that snow melts, it feeds small streams that flow off Longs Peak and the surrounding mountains. Together, these watercourses form the headwaters of the Colorado River, long before it flows through the Grand Canyon and down to the Gulf of Mexico. For years, environmentalists fought hard to protect the park's natural resources. And finally, in 1915, they succeeded when President Woodrow Wilson signed legislation to create the Rocky Mountain National Park. The park covers 416 square miles. Inside its borders are 114 peaks that rise above 10,000 feet. It's the highest national park in the U.S., which is why this alpine ecosystem has been called the land above the trees. It was from here that the Colorado River gradually forged a path west through the Rockies. The river's work has been impressive. Glenwood Canyon cuts right through the state, from east to west. It took millions of years for the Colorado River to carve out this canyon. So imagine having to build a highway through here in just 10. In the 1960s, the federal government proposed placing Interstate 70 at the bottom of the canyon. Environmentalists worried that it would damage the river and fought back. The resulting controversy stalled the project for years. Then, the freeway's engineers came up with an innovative and environmentally friendly solution. The roadways are suspended on giant cantilevers over the Colorado's banks to protect the river itself. Building the road decks on top of each other limits the footprint on the land. And blasting key tunnels through the canyon's walls ensures that the river's natural bends remain intact. To keep traffic from clogging this pristine landscape, the highway's main tunnel is armed with cutting-edge technology that tracks every car that enters. If a vehicle doesn't exit out the other side exactly when it should, an alarm notifies officials that the highway might be blocked. Curving gracefully as it hugs the canyon walls, the Glenwood Canyon Highway has been hailed as a successful example of nature-friendly design and is now celebrated as the crown jewel of America's interstate system. It's hard enough to build highways through the Rockies, so imagine what it takes to suspend a roadway across them. That's what engineers did here to make the Royal Gorge Bridge. This wooden roadway soars 956 feet above the Arkansas River. Its 150-foot towers are embedded in the gorge's rocky cliffs. It was the highest suspension bridge in the world when it was built, and is one of the scariest for those who dare to cross. But what's surprising about this bridge is that it wasn't even really built for traffic. It's actually the centerpiece of a theme park with a bungee ride that sends daredevils swinging out over the gorge, and a gondola. The Royal Gorge Bridge was commissioned by nearby Canyon City back in 1929 to generate tourism dollars and was completed in just 6 months. There are so many amazing feats of engineering all across Colorado. It's easy to take some of them for granted, like this seemingly simple road up Mount Evans. The summit of this mountain lies at 14,265 feet, atop a mass of former molten magma. But what's even more impressive is the 28-mile road to get here. It took 10 years to build and climbs 7,000 feet. By the time it reaches the top, it's the highest paved road in America, leading to one of the highest observatories in the world, in America's highest state. It was the view from the top of Colorado's peaks that inspired John Denver to write his famous Rocky Mountain High, a song that's inspired thousands to come to Colorado. where America's great mountains meet its great plains, where gold and silver once rode the rails, and thrill seekers hit the skies. This is the land of the Rocky Mountain High. This is Colorado.